Coming up on this Thursday edition of Daybreak, in her opening speech at this year's World Economic Forum in Davos, President Park says her envisioned creative economy would help resolve global issues, namely low growth, high unemployment and income imbalance. The Korean trade official who was kidnapped in the Libyan capital Tripoli has been set free 3 days after he was taken hostage by armed men. He's in good health and his abductors have been taken into custody. Plus, in the aftermath of Korea's largest ever personal data leak, the state financial regulator lays out measures to prevent such a breach happening again and to minimize the financial damage to those affected. Daybreak begins now.
You're watching Daybreak on Thursday, January 23rd. I'm Choi Yusan in Seoul. We begin in Davos, where President Park Geun-hye emphasized the creative economy and entrepreneurship during her opening speech at this year's World Economic Forum. Our Oh Jin-ju, who's traveling with the president, also tells us how President Park said unification of the two Koreas as would be like hitting a jackpot, not only on the peninsula, but for the region as a whole.
President Park says the so-called creative economy will be the driving force in, quote, reshaping the world, the theme of this year's World Economic Forum in Davos. In her opening speech at the first session of the global event, President Park pointed to entrepreneurship as the key to realizing a creative economy together with creativity.
We have a saying in Korea, beads are not considered jewelry unless they are woven together. Entrepreneurship is what weaves together the beads of creative ideas into new markets and into new jobs.
The president introduced Seoul's efforts to work towards a creative economy, such as setting up online and offline platforms and a public-private task force to help creative ideas develop into businesses. She vowed to ease any regulations that stand in the way of convergence and the creation of new industries by capping the total volume of regulations and presiding over a ministerial meeting to oversee such efforts. The creative economy, President Park says, could lay the path to overcoming three major challenges facing the world: low growth, high unemployment, and income disparities.
Through startups, as well as the innovation of existing businesses, a creative economy can generate new engines of growth and can grow jobs. There will also be less income inequality, since anyone with a great idea can live out one's dreams by starting a business.
When asked about concerns about the cost of reunification, an issue that keeps foreign investors from pouring money into South Korea, President Park said that reunification would be a jackpot not only for the two Koreas but also for neighboring countries.
통일이 되면은 북한 지역에 대대적인 SOC를 중심으로 한 투자가 일어나게 될 것이고, 또 이런 북한뿐만 아니라 주변국들도 어떤 큰 성장을 기대할 수가 있다.
She explained that the investments would boost other projects in, for example, China's 3 northeastern provinces and Russia's maritime territory. A notable and unexpected guest in the front row during President Park's speech was Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Many wondered whether the two leaders would meet or have a brief talk, but they didn't. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News, Bern.
A Korean trade official who was kidnapped by armed men in Libya over the weekend has been freed 3 days after he was taken hostage. Citing an official from the Korean embassy in Tripoli, Seoul-based Yonhap news agency reports Han Seok-woo, the head of the local branch of the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency, is now in the safe hands of the Korean embassy in Libya. The official also said Han is in good health. Libyan authorities have also arrested 4 men in connection to the abduction. The Korean embassy in Libya is believed to have cooperated closely with the Libyan government, but did not take part in any direct negotiations with the gunmen. Libya has struggled to stem violence and unrest across the country since the overthrow of former dictator Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. In the wake of Korea's worst ever personal data breach, the nation's financial regulator has drawn up a comprehensive set of measures. They include bolstering monitoring systems and strengthening punitive actions against firms and executives that leak personal data. Our Kim Young-gil has more on how far the new rules go.
The government announced a set of measures on Wednesday designed to prevent future leaks and minimize the damage to clients if a leak does occur. In the midst of growing public anxiety about the possible financial crimes that could be committed using the stolen data, which includes bank account, credit card numbers, and personal credit records, financial firms will now be barred from collecting an excessive amount of personal data from customers. The government will also strengthen the punishment on institutions that use client data for their marketing activities.
Financial institutions will be prohibited from using client data for marketing purposes, and the CEOs of the financial firms in question will be subject to strong punishments.
Firms that are found to have used client data for marketing could be fined up to 1% of their sales in the event of a data breach.
The government will fine banks and credit card firms up to $4.6 million if they are found to have mismanaged personal data, and client data will be automatically discarded 5 years after a client's final transaction.
The government also plans to impose heavy fines on the 3 card firms that were breached, KB국민, Yonhap, and Lotte, in what is now one of the biggest information leaks in the nation's history, with nearly 20 million people affected. And at the press conference Wednesday, the chairman of Korea's financial watchdog offered to take full responsibility for the data breach.
We apologize for the data leak that inconvenienced the people. We will do our best to wrap the case up quickly and promise to prevent such mishaps in the future.
The government has rolled out its strongest ever measures to raise the severity of personal data theft. And with comprehensive probes to kick off soon, the government hopes to prevent similar cases from happening again in the future. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
And the recent data leak scandal has shed light on the booming number of phone and internet scams in the country. Our UDN reports on the severity of con operations used to extract personal financial details.
The private financial information of 18 million Koreans that was leaked includes social security numbers, cell phone numbers, home addresses, and credit card numbers. Amid mounting concerns that the highly sensitive information will be misused, a new type of smishing scam that uses illegally obtained personal information has emerged. Smishing is a practice where swindlers send text messages containing malicious links that can be used to extract personal financial data when clicked. These new types of smishing messages pretend to represent banks, card companies, or financial authorities and trick users by making them think they are being contacted in regard to their leaked personal information. A Korean internet security provider, ESTsoft, says there's been over 173 cases of these kinds of smishing scams reported just in the past 2 weeks. To deal with the rising number of scams, the Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning will ban people from sending messages using a different caller ID starting next month. But this is only expected to have a limited effect, given that nearly 80% of all smishing messages are sent via the internet and not through mobile phones. Now, apart from smishing text messages, phishing websites are also prevalent in Korea. Phishing websites look almost identical to those of financial agencies and are also used to acquire personal financial information. Over 5,800 of such sites were busted from January to November last year, according to the ministry. That's 79 times more than the number of sites detected just 2 years ago. Now that a load of personal information has been released, increasing the risk of financial scams, people are advised to refrain from clicking unspecified links from text messages and limit the amount of transactions made through mobile phones. Yurian, Arirang News.
And over now to the latest on the bird flu outbreak in the nation. The government says it now suspects that a migratory bird called the bean goose could be the culprit behind the country's first avian flu in 3 years, in addition to the Baikal teal ducks originally blamed for bringing the virus to Korea. The Agriculture Ministry said in a press briefing Wednesday that H5N8, the same AI strain found in the Baikal teal ducks, was detected in the carcasses of bean geese found near a reservoir where the outbreak was first detected in Gochang County, Jeollabuk-do Province. The ministry added that the number of farms in Korea infected with avian influenza has now increased to 8, and that 6 other farms are being inspected for signs of the virus. The former chief of Korea's spy agency, Won Se-hoon, has been sentenced to 2 years behind bars for taking kickbacks from a businessman while in office. This is on top of Won's pending verdict for another trial on charges of meddling in the 2012 presidential election. Hwang Jie has the details.
The Seoul Central District Court on Wednesday sentenced the former chief of Korea's spy agency Won Se-hoon to 2 years in prison. Won, who headed the National Intelligence Service under President Lee Myung-bak, was found guilty of taking bribes from the head of the now bankrupt Hwangbo Construction for helping the company win bids for major construction deals between 2009 and 2010. He took some 160 million won, or roughly $150,000 in kickbacks. The Seoul court also ordered the former spy chief to pay a fine of $150,000. The court pointed out that the heavy punishment was inevitable considering the seriousness of the crime and that Won had not expressed sincere regret for his actions. Won is also currently on trial on charges of meddling in the December 2012 presidential election. He was charged with ordering NIS agents to post internet comments in favor of then-ruling party candidate Park Geun-hye leading up to voting day. The trial on those charges will resume early next week, and a verdict is expected in February. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
If you want the latest news from Korea and around the world.
Return to the negotiations.
President Park Geun-hye plans, given the current circumstances.
On your way to work or at home.
Defense Ministry. The legislature will convene a...
Tune into Daybreak on Arirang TV.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Tuesday. The much-anticipated international talks aimed at bringing peace to Syria have erupted into a war of words between the Syrian regime and the Western-backed main opposition. Wednesday's talks in the Swiss town of Montreux mark the first time the Syrian government and the moderate opposition have met face-to-face since the conflict began nearly 3 years ago. Both sides refused to compromise on the future role of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in the transitional government. Siding with the opposition, the U.S. said Syria cannot be saved with Assad in power. Russia, however, complained of outside interference in Syria's interim government. Despite the wrangling, UN envoy Lakhdar Brahimi said the Syrian government and rebels would discuss humanitarian aid, prisoners' release, and local ceasefires. Direct discussions in Geneva will open on Friday as planned. Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych has met with opposition leaders in an attempt to quell the escalating street violence, which has seen 3 people killed over the last 24 hours. The deaths, the first fatalities, and increasingly heated clashes with the police have inflamed anti-government protesters in Kiev. State prosecutors say 2 men were shot dead with live ammunition, and the 3rd man died falling from a great height. One of the opposition's leaders, Vitaly Klitschko, told the protesters that they had received no positive response from Yanukovych to their demands in their 3 hours of talks. Yanukovych's prime minister hasn't helped things by branding the anti-government protesters terrorists. The political crisis in Ukraine erupted in November after Yanukovych walked away from a landmark free trade deal with the EU in favor of closer economic ties with Russia. A Korean media outlet has released a confidential report proving that Japanese Navy and university medical schools conducted brutal experiments on living people during World War II. The top secret reports were stored at Japan's parliamentary library. Our Son Jung-in has the details.
This is a confidential report by the Japanese Navy exposing medical experiments conducted during World War II on living people. The report details an experiment on the absorption action of iperite, known as mustard gas, which rots human skin.
This is a dissertation based on a medical experiment on living bodies to develop protective army clothing.
It is part of a trove of documents stored at Japan's National Diet Library and released by a Korean media outlet, proving that Japanese army and university medical schools conducted gruesome medical experiments on war prisoners and civilians while they were still alive. It is the first evidence of such experiments having been conducted by institutions other than the infamous Japanese military Unit 731 in China. The documents also reveal that medical departments at 9 imperial universities in Japan during that time carried out similarly brutal medical experiments.
Even after 1930, the cruel experiments continued at other Japanese universities. Unfortunately, Unit 731 wasn't the only one to conduct experiments on living people.
One of the most notorious cases of human experimentation involved 8 members of a U.S. Air Force B-29 crew. The experiment was conducted in 1945 from May to June at Kyushu University in Japan. The American prisoners were subjected to vivisection and other gruesome experiments before being killed. Professors and students from the university were later brought to trial on charges of wrongful removal of body parts and cannibalism. None were convicted of war crimes. The Japanese government has yet to comment on the revelation and has thus far only ever acknowledged the existence of Unit 731, not the experiments it was reported to have conducted. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
A foreign and defense policy forum was held Wednesday in Seoul, where leaders in the field brainstormed ways to handle any type of threat from Pyongyang. Our Kim Hyun-bin filed this report.
With tensions escalating on the Korean peninsula because of an unpredictable northern neighbor, scores of academics and military experts gathered Wednesday at the Asia-Pacific Policy Research Institute Security Forum, with the goal of improving inter-Korean relations and defense policies.
Asia-Pacific Policy Research Institute has sponsored and also has organized more than 250 times foreign and security policy international symposium for the last 10 years to pursuing to the rational foreign policy objectives and also to bringing peace and stability in Korean Peninsula for the years to come.
In addition to the leading researchers in the field, the forum also welcomed Vice Defense Minister Park Jisung, who said the military will enhance its defense capabilities and diplomacy.
In 2014, we will not allow any provocations from North Korea. We'll do this by establishing a strong defense posture, and we will use military diplomacy to maintain peace and stability in Northeast Asia.
The minister also emphasized the importance of structuring the nation's air and defense systems, along with the kill chain system to counter any nuclear and missile attack from the north. The Foreign and Defense Policy Forum is held every month, with experts in each field brainstorming for new ideas that could help the government deal with the North Korea crisis. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And on to some disturbing news for parents raising children. A new report suggests that Korean kids have alarming levels of hazardous chemicals in their systems. Shin Se-min has the details.
Korean children have excessive amounts of lead, mercury, and bisphenol A in their bodies, levels far higher than those found in children in other countries. That's according to a Ministry of Environment report released Wednesday. It shows that Korean children between the ages of 6 and 18 have toxic substances like lead and mercury in their bodies at 7 times the level found in children in other developed countries. For mercury, the levels found were 7 times higher than were found in children in Canada. The report also found high levels of bisphenol A in children, a toxic material used mainly in plastic products. The amount of this toxin found in teenagers is nearly double that found in adults, particularly concerning as bisphenol A can disturb the endocrine system, which is responsible for producing hormones. The good news is that although the levels detected are quite high, they still fall below the dangerous level set by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Environmental Protection Agency. Still, the numbers are alarming. A researcher at the National Institute of Environmental Research said that even though the toxic levels fall below the threshold of what's considered dangerous, if they remain consistent or even rise, they could lead to disorders related to the reproductive system. Children are more susceptible to toxins because of frequent exposure to toys with toxic chemical contents. To reduce exposure to these hazardous substances, it's advised that children wash their hands frequently and that parents be more mindful when purchasing toys. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off with the latest update on the possible return of Park Jisung to the national team. While many fans hope for the return, chances are he won't be returning. While the former national team captain didn't comment on the issue just yet, his father, Park Sung-jung, said in a recent phone interview that he'll be participating in the annual charity match either on May 31st or June 1st. Now, being that it's close to the World Cup dates, chances are he won't be returning, as his father emphasized once again that he's retired from the national team. Meanwhile, manager Hong Myung-bo still hopes to meet with Park Jisung regarding the issue. Now moving on, the Korean Basketball League stated that starting next season, each quarter will be added 2 minutes and will play 12-minute quarters instead of 10. That is until all of a sudden the league is under fire for the rule change months after it was finalized. Now, according to several head coaches from the league, they're against the idea of adding 2 more minutes to each quarter, stating that it'll increase the chances of injuries for the players late in the season. But what angered the teams and the head coaches is that the league didn't ask them how they felt about the changes and went with it either way. Now, the 10 head coaches in the league plan to hold a meeting regarding this issue real soon. And moving on to some Wednesday night's KBL action, we had 2 games that took place last night, starting off with the Seoul SK Knights taking on the Wonju Dongbu Promi. Now, the first quarter of the game led by Kim Sun-young and also Courtney Sims, the SK Knights take a huge 21-10 lead before heading into halftime with a comfortable 45-37 lead. Now, third quarter led by newly acquired Michael Dunnigan's 8 points, Dongbu starts rallying in the second half, but that rally is cut short as SK hangs on to take this game 82-74. And next up, the Goyang Orions taking on the Seoul Samsung Thunder's big first quarter from Anthony Richardson, who puts up 12 points in the quarter as the Orions take a 20-16 lead before Leon Williams tears it up as well, scoring 15 points in the second quarter as the Orions take a monster 44-28 lead at the half. Third quarter, Samsung Thunders continue to struggle from the field as the Orions never look back in this game, 76-59 your final score. And now finishing things off with some V-League action from last night. The first place IBK Altos cruised past Daejeon KGC in straight sets 3-0 over on the Women's League. Meanwhile, a huge matchup here as the Samsung-Hwaja Blue Fangs took on the Hyundai Capital Skywalkers. And the battle between the 2 best foreign players in the league, Liberman Algames and the Hyundai Capital Skywalkers, take the first set 26-24. But the Blue Fangs changed it up in the next 3 sets with Leo Martinez leading the way, putting up 40 attack points on the night compared to Liberman Algames' 27 points as the Blue Fangs take the next 3 sets, taking this game 3-1. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, the unseasonably mild weather set to begin today. Morning lows and afternoon highs should be about 4 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday. But here in Seoul, we are waking up to a cold morning low of -5. So please dress warmly before heading out. But afternoon highs will rise rapidly to reach in the mild side. The most of the nation could expect mostly sunny skies, but it looks like the level of fine dust particles will be relatively high here in the capital area in the early hours today. So please put on a face mask to protect yourself from the toxic smoke. But temperatures are definitely on the rise, and tomorrow will be the mildest day of the week. Temperatures getting up to near 10 degrees Celsius here in the central area, and it will continue to mild throughout the weekend. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. Afternoon high in Seoul will get up to 5, and Busan will top out at 10 with lots of sunshine. Now for other regions, it looks like Jeju will climb up to 9 in the afternoon, and Gyeongbokgung Mountain will be topping out at -2. Well, I hope you have a wonderful day, and back to Yusun in the studio.
And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Thank you for being with us.